BTS News Today.it started as whispers, faint and uncertain, echoing through fandom spaces and quiet corners of the internet. For years, the name Jakook carried both wonder and mystery, a name that symbolized something beyond friendship, beyond performance, something that blurred the lines between reality and emotion. But over the past few months, that name has taken on a new meaning, one that no one expected to resurface so powerfully. Jakook, the intertwined identities of Jimin and Jungkook, has once again shaken the world, not because of what they did, but because of what they didn't say. It began one silent evening in Seoul. Jungkook was spotted leaving HYB late at night, dressed in black, his hood pulled low, his steps slow and thoughtful. There was something different about him, not the radiant idol who commanded the world stage, but a quiet soul trying to protect something fragile. Hours later, Jimin appeared online. His post was brief, a black and white photo of rain dripping down a window pane with a caption that read, "Some meanings are better left unspoken." The timing was uncanny. The internet ignited. Armies everywhere began connecting dots, the subtle parallels, the late-night lives, the soft glances that lingered too long. The truth behind Jikook wasn't just about moments captured in fan edits or interviews. It was something deeper, something that seemed to speak in silence. What were they trying to tell the world? As the speculation reached a fever pitch, an anonymous insider, someone close to the production team of a yet unannounced BTS documentary, revealed something that sent waves across the fandom. There are segments that show how close Jimin and Jungkook truly are, the insider said. It's not what people think, but it's not less than that either. It's about trust, dependence, and something that even they can't define. Those words lingered, like a confession wrapped in riddles. The following week, Jungkook appeared on Weverse Live. The atmosphere was soft, dimly lit, his voice almost whispering. Between laughter and songs, there was a pause, a long, reflective silence before he said, "Sometimes, you don't have to explain everything. What matters is that you understand each other." It wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but fans knew. They always knew. Jimin wasn't in the frame, but somehow his presence felt near. The way Jungkook's eyes softened, the way he absent-mindedly smiled before continuing his sentence. Back in 2017, during one of their earliest interviews, Jimin had once said, "Kook always has this fire inside him. I just hope he knows he doesn't have to face it alone." That line resurfaced this week, shared millions of times across social media, as if fans were collectively remembering the origins of something pure. But the true meaning behind Jikook, according to several close observers, lies in how they've protected each other through the years. When the pressures of fame crushed them, when rumors spiraled out of control, it was often Jimin who acted as Jungkook's anchor, quiet, composed, patient. And when Jimin faltered, when the world's expectations weighed too heavily on his delicate shoulders, it was Jungkook who stepped forward, unapologetically protective. There were small but telling moments. A live broadcast where Jungkook subtly adjusted Jimin's mic. A behind-the-scenes clip showing Jimin quietly placing a water bottle in Jungkook's hand before a performance. A soft exchange of glances on stage that spoke volumes more than any lyric could. None of these gestures were scripted. None of them needed words. This year, when Jimin released his solo work and Jungkook followed with his own, fans noticed echoes of each other's presence in their art, shared themes, mirrored lyrics, even color palettes that seemed to converse across albums. One music critic from Seoul wrote, "They may not collaborate on stage right now, but emotionally, they are still harmonizing." Still, the shock of these revelations isn't that Jikook exists, it's how real it feels, how it refuses to fade despite time and distance. HYB has never commented on their dynamic, but insiders claim that the company has long respected their unspoken connection. They know what it means to fans, one producer said. But more importantly, they know what it means to the members themselves. It's sacred. In a recent interview overseas, Jungkook was asked what he valued most about his years with BTS. His response was simple but piercing: honesty, and people who stay when it's hard. Fans caught the faint smile that followed, the kind that seemed to carry memories of midnight talks and promises shared off camera. Meanwhile, Jimin, while promoting his fashion collaboration in Paris, was caught by reporters asking about Jungkook's project. His answer was tender, almost shy. "I always support him. He's someone who gives me courage." The quote instantly trended, not because of the words themselves, but because of the way he said them: slow, heartfelt, as if revisiting a moment only he could recall. Perhaps that's what makes Jikook timeless. It's never about confirmation or denial, never about fan service or fiction. It's about the language they've built together, one that exists beyond microphones and cameras. The true meaning behind Jikook might not be something anyone can define, because it belongs to them, and to the shared emotion of millions who have watched it unfold. As the night fell over Seoul last weekend, another moment stirred hearts around the world. A fan posted a video taken outside HYB's building. It was brief, shaky, almost accidental, but in the corner of the frame, two familiar figures appeared, walking side by side under the same umbrella. No security, no flashing lights. Just quiet laughter carried by the wind. The clip spread like wildfire, not for its clarity, but for its feeling. Jimin's soft voice could be heard saying something, perhaps teasing, perhaps affectionate, before Jungkook replied with that unmistakable laugh that once echoed through countless lives. The rain fell harder then, blurring the scene, almost as if the universe itself was keeping their secret safe. By dawn, Jakook was once again at the top of global trends. Not because of drama or scandal, but because people felt something real. For years, their bond has been dissected, romanticized, doubted, and defended. But as one fan beautifully put it online, the true meaning behind Jikook isn't about labels. It's about connection, two souls growing, protecting, and understanding each other when no one else can. And maybe that's the revelation the world needed all along. Not a confession, not a headline, but a reminder that genuine bonds still exist in a world built on performances. That behind the dazzling lights and crafted images, there are two people who simply care, deeply, quietly, and forever. When the cameras turn off, when the noise fades and the world forgets to look, Jikook remains, not as a ship or a fantasy, but as a truth softly glowing behind the curtain. A truth that doesn't need explanation, because, in the end, it was never just about them. It was about the way they made us believe in something real. And that is the true meaning behind Jikook. The story didn't end that night. If anything, that moment under the rain marked a quiet rebirth of something fans had been longing to feel again. The raw, unfiltered connection between two souls who had once lit up the same stage and the same universe. By morning, Seoul's skyline shimmered with the afterglow of 1,000 conversations. Social media buzzed, the phrase "the true meaning behind Jikook" spreading like wildfire, and people began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something they were never meant to fully understand, only to feel. The next day, Jungkook appeared briefly at a recording studio in Gangnam. Cameras caught him entering through the back door, his hair damp, his expression unreadable. He waved to a few fans, his smile small but genuine, before disappearing inside. Minutes later, a song snippet leaked, a melody so intimate that listeners described it as a whisper between two hearts. The lyrics spoke of time passing but promises remaining, of someone who still walks beside him in every dream. The credits listed no features, but fans immediately recognized the emotional signature, the soft vulnerability that always seemed to bloom whenever Jimin lingered in Jungkook's mind. That a few hours later, Jimin updated his Instagram story, a photo of the sunrise scene from his apartment balcony. The caption read, "The rain stopped. The light feels familiar." No tags, no explanations. But armies didn't need one. They knew who he was thinking of. They always did. Why now? Major news outlets had begun to pick up the story, not in the sensationalized way tabloids usually did, but with an almost reverent curiosity. Headlines like "The Emotional Depth of Jakook, Beyond Fan Imagination," and "Jungkook and Jimin's Quiet Bond Moves Fans to Tears" appeared across Korean and international media. What was once fan speculation had turned into cultural conversation, a phenomenon rooted in authenticity rather than gossip. Behind the scenes, people close to the duo began sharing subtle details that only deepened the fascination. A backup dancer who had toured with BTS confessed in a podcast they were like mirror images of each other. When Jimin felt tired, Jungkook would silently hand him water or pull him back from the edge of exhaustion without a word. You didn't need to be close to notice it. It was like watching gravity itself. Even Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of HYB, was once rumored to have told staff, "There's something sacred about the way they move together. Don't try to direct it. Just let it exist." Whether or not he truly said it, the sentiment fit perfectly with the legend that Jikook had become, an unspoken bond that didn't need permission to breathe. Weeks passed, and yet, the ripples of that quiet rain-soaked encounter continued to expand. Fans began creating artworks, paintings, edits, short films, interpreting the true meaning behind Jikook in countless ways. Some saw it as friendship made divine. Others saw it as love that transcended labels. Many described it as two souls walking the same road at different paces, but always finding their way back. Then, out of nowhere, came the message that made hearts stop worldwide. Late one evening, Jungkook went live again. His hair was messy, his hoodie oversized, his tone relaxed, but there was something in his eyes, something fragile. He didn't sing, he didn't dance. He just spoke softly. "You know," he began, "there are things that belong only to you and someone else. Even if the world asks, even if they don't understand, you protect it. Because once you lose it, it never comes back." He paused, staring at the camera, as if debating whether to continue. Then, with a faint smile, he whispered, "I'm grateful for someone who always protected me, even when I didn't say thank you enough." The live ended abruptly after that, leaving millions of fans stunned and emotional. Within minutes, "Thank you, Jimin," trended globally, as fans interpreted his words as a quiet confession of gratitude. Jimin, of course, remained silent. But a day later, during a public appearance at a fashion event in Tokyo, a reporter asked him if he had seen Jungkook's live. His reaction was unforgettable. For a split second, his usually composed expression softened. His lips curled into a shy smile, and he looked down before simply saying, "Yes, I always watch." That single phrase was enough to make the world stop breathing. After that, something shifted. The conversations around Jakook became less about proof and more about appreciation. People began to see it not as mystery, but as message, a lesson about sincerity in an industry built on illusion. It wasn't about whether they were real or not. It was about how real they made us feel. Even other artists began commenting on their dynamic. A well-known lyricist and soul said, "The energy between Jimin and Jungkook reminds me of old soul duets, where two voices weren't just singing to each other, but for each other. That's rare." Another musician compared them to yin and yang. Different, but incomplete without one another. As months rolled on, quiet coincidences continued to appear. When Jungkook released a new single, the choreography video showed him dancing alone in a dimly lit studio, until the very end, when a second silhouette appeared beside him, faint and blurred, moving in harmony. It was never confirmed who it was, but many believed it was Jimin. The choreography, fluid, emotional, almost like a conversation, felt like an extension of every unspoken word between them. Then came Jimin's turn. In his next performance video, eagle-eyed fans noticed a detail no one expected. A single tattoo on his wrist, temporary or real, no one knew, but it read simply, "Stay." That one word mirrored Jungkook's past lyric in "Still With You." If I can be with you, I'll stay. The fandom broke, not in chaos, but in awe. It was as though the two were speaking in a secret code only they could write. Using art as their language to in late autumn, a photo emerged from a Paris cafe. Two men sitting by the window, both wearing masks and hats. The photo was grainy, distant, but the internet swore it was them. Whether it was real or not didn't even matter. It symbolized something larger, the belief that some connections simply persist, quietly, beneath the noise that be why winter. Jakook had transcended even their own fame. Documentaries began exploring the idea of human connection in pop culture, often referencing their bond as a modern myth, something too pure to be fully captured, too genuine to fade. Psychologists analyzed the phenomenon, calling it collective empathy. One said, Jakook is less about two idols, and more about how audiences project their own yearning for authentic connection through them. But for ARMY, it wasn't theory. It was something they felt, something that healed, inspired, and reminded them of the humanity behind the perfection. The last time Jungkook and Jimin were seen in public together was at an awards afterparty. A brief moment when the two crossed paths, exchanging a quick embrace captured in the corner of a camera flash. They didn't pose, they didn't perform. But that embrace, warm, genuine, and wordless, said everything that no official statement ever followed. No confirmation, no denial. Just silence. Beautiful, loaded silence. And maybe that's exactly how it was meant to be, because perhaps the true meaning behind Jikook isn't meant to be explained in interviews or dissected through theories. It lives in glances, gestures, lyrics, and the shared breath between songs. It lives in rain-soaked nights, quiet smiles, and the invisible thread that connects two souls even when the world isn't watching. And as long as ARMY remembers that, as long as the music continues and their hearts still beat in rhythm with those two names, Jimin and Jungkook will never really be apart. They will remain a whisper, a heartbeat, a secret beautifully kept between reality and dream. And in that quiet truth, the world finally understands what Jikook truly means.